Hello, and welcome to The Last Night Show, America's favorite historical talk show where last night's news is tonight's history. I'm your host, Alicia. Tonight we have a very special guest. She's the author of the National History Day Competition 2017 topics from the archives of HSP. I know, it's a mouthful, and unfortunately you can't even buy this book, but that's why we're here to talk about it tonight so that you can hear some of the topics. So let's give a big round of applause to our first guest, Catherine.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Alicia. Was that George Washington that I just walked by?
Oh yeah, he stopped by earlier. We go back, like way back. I mean, not like William Penn back, but more like a Franklin.
Okay, I get it. You guys go back. But when you mentioned William Penn, it made me think about the founder of Pennsylvania and our first topic. Penn founded the first religiously tolerant colony. Yet even though he founded Pennsylvania with good intentions, the earliest colonists didn't always follow his example of peace.
Right. I have to say, I love the first chapter where you talk about the infamous Paxton Boys. In 1763, a group of settlers murdered the peaceful Conestoga Native Americans in what is considered one of the worst attacks on Native Americans. The government cited these killings as murder and put out a reward for the capture of the attackers.
Yes, I'm so glad you remembered. I found great material at HSP, where I read some of the accounts of the colonists' outrage over the brutal attacks. Did you know that even Benjamin Franklin became involved in this? When the Paxton Boys marched to Philadelphia to list their grievances about the colonial government, Franklin was the one to receive them.
Geez, I truly believe Ben Franklin was involved in everything.
Ben. He makes a cameo in our second topic, too, when we talk about the Stamp Act and the colonial protests.
The Stamp Act, yet another way the British came up with to collect taxes from the colonists to pay for wars against the French. This act made colonists pay for many types of paper goods, even playing cards.
You're right. Many people were unhappy. Franklin testified against the Stamp Act in England and helped secure its repeal. But colonists didn't sit quietly waiting for the Stamp Act to be repealed. At HSP, they have some examples of the stamps and even have newspapers denouncing the Stamp Act.
I've seen those. They're not subtle. My favorite has the skull and crossbones at the top and says, expiring, in hopes of a resurrection to life again. The author was William Bradford, who believed the Stamp Act would bring the demise of journalism.
Well, we all know that didn't happen. This is a great example of the power of journalism in taking a stand, which is something I mentioned in my book. These dramatic newspapers got the attention of the public, and they created real change.
Wow, it would be so cool to see the accounts and diaries of all these rebellious people even hundreds of years ago.
And they're not just protesting taxes. Here in Pennsylvania, there was a bigger war brewing, the issue of slavery. The Pennsylvania Abolition Society was organized in 1775. While most colonists were fighting for freedom in our rebellions and revolutions, African Americans were still being held as slaves. It took a group of courageous individuals to fight this injustice.
So I heard even women became involved in the abolitionist movement. Wasn't there a Philadelphia Female Anti-Slavery Society?
There was. Some of the members include the Grimke sisters and Lucretia Mott, who both make an appearance in my third chapter. That chapter mainly focuses on my all-time favorite abolitionist, though, William Still, otherwise known as the father of the Underground Railroad.
He played a huge part in helping many slaves escape to freedom. I remember that he even kept a journal with interviews that contained information about these former slaves. Things like name, alias, height, size, hair color, family name, places they lived, how they escaped, and so much more. It's crazy how HSP has the only known copy of his actual journal.
Well, we think he kept more than one journal, but the only surviving journal is at HSP. It's called Journal C. It's surprising that he even kept journals at all because of how dangerous it was to keep such detailed interview records because of the Fugitive Slave Act.
Right, the Fugitive Slave Act required all escaped slaves to be returned to their masters, even if the slaves were in a free state. How horrible.
Well, Still saw these interviews as an opportunity for former slaves to find their family members and to defy the slave owners. I mean, that is how he found his own brother, Peter Still. He interviewed him after he escaped slavery and realized that he was talking to his very own half-brother.
Wow, that's impressive and intense. But let's move on to something a little bit more lighthearted. Didn't you mention a party? I believe you mentioned it was animal-themed party, so I brought my reindeer ears.
Alicia, I was talking about the Black Panther party, which is actually more of a political party than a party that celebrates Panthers?
No, we said that we weren't going to talk politics.
Here in Philadelphia, we had lots of activism going on during that time. We had the desegregation of Girard College, we had the riots of Columbia Ave.
Well, it's actually really surprising that we had riots here in the city of brotherly love. Philadelphia is a place of kind, quiet, patient individuals. Well, excuse me? I said no Cowboys paraphernalia anywhere on this set. We are Eagles fans here, and we're not mean. We're just passionate.
Right. Well, don't worry. We totally understand that Philly has a very deep passion for sports. And if you want to do a sports topic, you can look at the history of the Pippians. But we got a little bit off topic, so can we go back to civil rights? I'm assuming you know about Justine Rector.
Yeah, I actually no, not at all.
Well, Justine Rector made lemonade before Beyonce made it famous. She was an African-American journalist here in Philadelphia in the late 1960s. She has a collection here at HSP full of pamphlets from the civil rights activists, information on African-American press in the city, and her own professional journalism articles. The depth of her collection is amazing, and she offers an insight into contemporary topics such as police brutality, urban education, Black nationalism.
She sounds like an extraordinary individual that always stood up for what she believed in. I would love to see someone tackle a project on such a modern woman. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today. Just so you know, the Historical Society of Pennsylvania is open to researchers grades 6 through 12. So please come visit us, and don't forget to visit hsp.org/education.
Americans are used to standing up for their freedoms and liberties. What we showed you today is only a small portion of the documents at HSP, which has over 21 million items. So the list of great topics does not end there.
Real change can happen when we work together. So please, come visit us and take a stand for what you believe in. That's a wrap for tonight's Last Night Show, where yesterday's news is today's